So this is the new app feature, new UiPath app feature, in which the data gets updated in like blink of seconds. So it is the real-time execution of the processes that are running in the background. So if you just see that as soon as I enter the data over here, within no time and in like blink of seconds, the data is getting updated in the data table. All right. So now how is this happening? Like initially before the update that we are going to discuss in this video, to update a table with data, and now in the background this data is not coming from data service. This data is coming from an Excel file that is considered as my source data. But still, if you see the execution, it is happening within a blink of an eye. So how is that happening? What is the feature behind this? What is this new real-time update of attended automation we are talking about in UiPath apps? You might have also seen a forum post for this. We are going to talk about everything of this particular feature in detail, and we are going to build this app from scratch. We are going to see what process is involved, how you build that process, from where do you pick the templates, and all that things. So we are going to work on that. All right. So let me talk about first on what I'm making the video about. All right. I was just pretty much very excited to talk about the feature at the right at the start of the video. But yeah, and this is what we are going to talk about. Attended real-time communication. So UiPath Apps product team, Venkata is one of the principal product manager of UiPath Apps, had posted this 10 days back, and I'm since then exploring this and trying to figure out what use case and how I should make this video. Right. So now when we talk about this feature will help you update data in real time in your UiPath apps. But one thing before you go ahead and watch this complete video, this is currently only supported for attended robots. As you can see the title of this post as well, apps attended real-time communication. So just not to set any false expectation to make you watch the video completely, making it clear that this is the feature that can be used for attended robots and attended automations. All right. So now what this feature says is initially we had to publish a process for every workflow that we want to execute. But now you will not have to do that. So initially, let's suppose on a button click, I have to fetch data from an Excel file. I have to use a rule called a start process that will start the process. My assistant will open, it will execute the process, then it will stop the processing, it will send the output, and then it will be displayed. It almost takes that fraction of seconds. I believe like it almost will be 20-30 seconds more slower than what I'm doing right now. If you see, I'm just typing the data over here. And if I just click on fetch details, I can see the details for Nisarg. If I do MK01 customer ID, I can see for Mukesh Kala. So now the processing speed, which is there, that has become a lot faster. So there are some prerequisite to that as well. The capabilities and how to do all these things I'm going to talk about in the video. But yeah, you need the latest package of UiPath workflow events. We are going to see, we are going to install it in UiPath Studio. You also need the robot version that is 23.4.4. Now, right now, this feature is for attended automation. What next expectations are set by the product team is that we will have something for unattended automations as well using apps and queues. So we already have queue integration, but there will be more a structured way of doing it. All right. So now, coming to what changes have been made on UiPath app side, like UiPath apps product, then we'll see what we have to do it in the studio. So till now, we had one of the rule that was known as start process. So if I go on this button, click events, and if I go and create a rule right over here. So I create an event, we have this rule, or you can say, yeah, let's say it a rule, configure rules, we can see here. So we see there is called as start process. This is still there. If you want to run a process, and you want to run an unattended process, you can do it, and this rule will be still there. But something new that has got introduced is trigger workflow. So now your one process can have multiple workflows, and you can only trigger the one that you want to on that particular button click. So what this means is, in one single process of UiPath Studio, you can create 10, 15 different XAMLs. You can use that 10, 15 different XAMLs in one process only, and you can trigger them one wherever it is necessary. But the only requirement is, again, it has to be attended. So you can use this trigger workflow. So this is one of the feature that you need to, just remember while we are going through this complete video, and it is going to be pretty much detailed as well. All right, so trigger workflow is something that you have to remember. So here what I can do is, now if I just remove it, right? You see, real-time process is the process that I've published. In that, I have two XAMLs. I can use this individual XAMLs over here. Click to input override. In that, there are arguments that obviously we will be using, and I'm going to override the value. To see what we are, how we are referencing this and how we are using this, there are other videos that I've already uploaded on my channel in the UiPath VB apps playlist. There you will find how to write this particular syntax. I'm not going to get into that basic things. Right. So here what we have done is we have created a very simple app. Now let's talk about what we have created in the app. Okay, so this was one thing that we need to understand, that there is a trigger rule feature that you have to use for this particular app that you are building. Now I've used a text box that is going to take the value of the customer ID. Let's suppose it is a customer management app that you are building, or it could be anything. Just let's take an example that we have customer ID. Okay. On click of a button, I'm triggering a workflow. So like I showed right now, you have to publish the process to orchestrator. It has to be a attended process. We will get into how we are building the process later. But yeah, on fetch details, you have to create an event. Whatever input values you want to override, you have to override them. And then you have to create this workflow. Now what I'm doing is I'm fetching the data from Excel file. So if I just open this, so this is my Excel file. We are going to look up into this particular column. We are going to fetch these details and show on the app. Now on the app end, let's come over here. If I go to general, your output is a data table. Now my process has an output. How we are building the process, I'll shortly talk about it because there are many things involved in that as well. But this is the process that I've built. I'll not get into the process details because it is a simple lookup that I'm doing. Read range, build data table is my output data table. Then I'm going to look up the value. I'm going to add it to my output data table, and that's it. So the process is pretty straightforward. Okay. Now, how will you use the output argument, that is the data table value, into your this particular table? So I just did the data source open. Here what you have to write the syntax. Processes, you have already published a process. Real-time app process dot the XAML name dot your arguments will come over here. So if you see, my argument is displayed. Since it is a data table, I'm going to use as enumerable dot to list source and open close the bracket, because it expects the data to be in list source of some particular type. So this is how you write the processes dot your process name that you have published dot your XAML name, your data table or whatever value you want to display as an output argument, dot as enumerable dot to list source. Remove this and click on save. Now, after, oh, oops, which we need to, okay, no problem. I think we'll just do it again. Okay, so this we have done. Now, to display the columns over here, what you have to do is name, you can mention anything. It need not be necessary same as the data table. So name, I can write which space without space. But in source, what you have to do is you have to write the column name of the data that you want to map with this particular column. So if you see over here in my Excel file, I have this customer ID. So in name, I have given it with space. It does not matter. But in source, you have to give the same column name which is there. Right. So let's map this again. Now here it is going to be customer name. Again, this can be anything. Source needs to be the same. Then we have another thing. It is customer email. Like I said, this could be anything. The source has to be exactly the same. So this is only for data table. Okay. If there is any other value, you can just simply display it. Name, email address. Last is contact. All right. So I have created all the columns. You can change the sequence you want to. I'm okay with that, and that is fine. Okay. So this is what we have done. Customer ID, name, email, address, and contact. So in case if a table gets or a column gets added in your data output data table, what you can do is you can just add a column over here and map it. So I hope this is clear that the name could be anything, but the source has to be same as the data table column. All right. So now this is done. So now I have successfully created my app, that is customer ID, fetch details on button. We have created a rule. Here I have mapped the data. Now we are going to go on the very interesting side of our process, of our UiPath process, and there is a different concept that is being used over here that we are going to learn about. Because it is not just some magic that the app is just refreshing the data in real time. There is a concept of local triggers that we are going to see now. Okay, so let me open this now. Let me go to project panel and pin this. Okay. So now, whenever you create a project where you want to implement this real-time automations, right? Let's go to the documentation by Venki. Yeah. Build multiple XMLs with a single automation project rather than building separate automation projects, like I already said. Marking these XMLs as entry points so that they can be invoked from apps. Okay. A new studio template that should be used that enables communication between apps and attended robot. A new rule called trigger workflow we have already seen. This studio template is already available. You can go in templates and you can use that. But I'm going to show you how you can create it from scratch as well. If you don't want to use that template. If you want to use the template, the links are already there in the same forum post, RPA component. You can use that workflow communication template. And there is this real-time communication template as well. All right. So that are the two that you can use. Coming back to process. One, you have to definitely create a main XML that will be uh, like just any other main XML. You have to install one package that is UiPath.WorkflowEvents.Activities. So just go to manage packages, go to all packages, type over here UiPath.Workflow and this. That's it. You just have to install this particular package. Once you do that, you have to create a main XML. In your main XML, you have to drag and drop an activity called as run local triggers. Run local triggers. This activity initializes and starts all local triggers that listens for events on user machines. Now, basically, your workflows are your local triggers now. Since you are enabling entry points and you are going to invoke them in your app, and they are going to be treated as trigger. So on button click, this trigger will execute this particular workflow. So this means ML will continuously listen to that triggers in background. That is how it is happening in real time. Because the bot is not consuming a license, but it is continuously listening to a trigger. All right. So that is how this particular concept is happening, but there is still more to it. Okay. Now you have to create any other XAML as you create input output arguments, taking the values from apps should be input, sending outside should be output. Once you create this workflow, you have to right click it and you have to enable the entry point. Right now, if I disable, you should see this point value, enable entry point. So if you see there is an icon, arrow. Why this? Because when you publish and in your trigger workflow, when you want to invoke a particular XAML, it should have enabled the entry point that you are allowing your automation to work from that particular workflow directly, and you don't have to execute anything else. Right. So this is the second thing that you have to do. First thing, create a main workflow, use run local trigger activity. Second, create a normal XAML that you would like to invoke from app and enable the entry point. And you can create as many XAMLs as you want. Also, the very important thing is installing the UiPath.WorkflowEvent.Activities. Now, you have to create one more workflow, that is apps internal trigger. You can give it any name that you want to, but I would prefer just give this particular name, right? Now, if you see, this is the one, this run local triggers, right? What is it connected with? It is connected with this particular workflow, local triggers. Now, this is activity called as app request trigger. Let me show over here. What is that? If I hover over it, trigger to invoke workflow file from apps. So when you click that button, here is where the trigger is coming, right? Now, this is a pre-built workflow. You can use it. This is also available in one of the documentation. If you go to trigger workflow, if you scroll down, if you download this simple project in sample project, in that you will find that particular workflow. Now, if the connection is lost, it will show connection lost, stop trigger, else handle app request. Now, this is another activity, a helper activity that works with UiPath apps trigger activity to run the workflow and send back the result. So what it will do is whatever request you have sent, right? It will listen to that request and it will execute that particular workflow. We don't have to deep dive into it, that what is within trigger event arguments and all that. But yeah, if you want, you can just, explore the properties of, if you see connection with app lost, input are trigger name, trigger type, workflow name, whatever you want to, you can explore it. But what this handle app request activity will do is it will take your that particular event argument that is there, event that you have triggered, and it will execute that particular workflow and send back the data to the app. That is the reason we had to install this particular package, UiPath.WorkflowEvent.Activities. In the activities, if you see, they fall within that app request trigger and handle app request. So you can create this particular workflow. Right, and it is a trigger-based workflow. If you see, it is not a normal workflow. It is a trigger-based workflow. You don't have to enable entry point for this because we are not executing this. This is just to listen to the triggers that are coming from the app. So now this is how you create this workflow from scratch. There is a marketplace component that you can use as well. But just so that you understand how to create it from scratch, here is the data for it. So main workflow, first of all, install UiPath workflow event activities, create a main workflow with run local triggers activity, create a apps internal trigger where local trigger is used, that is app trigger activity, app request trigger, and handles app request. This is what you have to do, and you can just check the connection with app lost. Now, once you do this, what you have to do is, normally, if this is an process which does not involve any UI activities, then what you need to do is just go to workflow analyzer settings here in general tab, right? Select this as starts in background. Okay. So since you are not going to anyways use any UI automation activities, why do you need to keep it as a foreground process? Make it background. And like I said, this is particularly only supported for attended automation. That is the reason you have to select this particular checkbox as well. Because other than this, every time you publish, it will go as unattended, and we don't want that. So what you are going to do is you are going to mark this as attended automation. Now, once you do that and you publish it, and I have already published it to my personal orchestrator. So if you see real-time app process I've published, and it shows us attended, because in my workflow over here, again I am showing analyze workflow analyzer settings, go to general, starts in background, and disable sorry, attended automation. So both the things you will find over here. This shows background process and this shows unattended. This shows attended. Now, when I come back to app, here you have to simply click on process. You have to find that process and you have to map it. So over here, real-time process, it shows already it is mapped, and that's it. So after that, I already showed that in fetch details, we are triggering the workflow that we want, and we are mapping the data table data, where the name could be anything, but the source should be the same as the column name. So this is how you create a process with real-time updates. Now, let's suppose instead of Excel, I'm using here Excel just to show the simple execution and the understanding of this. Here it could be a SQL database as well, since there is no direct integration of UiPath apps and SQL. Many people ask me that if I run a query, it will check the connection SQL and it will do all that things. It takes a lot of time when the process is loading, but this improves the customer experience exceptionally, right? Because now things seem over here in real time. If I do this just PD01, you just see it will work really like a real time execution. So that is what this complete feature is about. You can read about it more in the documentations and many different places that you want. So I have already showed that there is a sample project. This is a city weather automation reporting bot that you can download and you can use. That is where I learned it from, right? So yeah. If you face any issues, you have anything that you would like to discuss or talk about, like about what this real-time execution was or where more it can be used, feel free to drop in the comment and I'll be more than happy to connect over a Zoom call and we can talk about it, or we can think of some other use cases as well, right? So I hope this video helped you understand what this feature is. I know this was a very detailed video on Sorry, yeah. So this was a detailed video on apps attended real-time communication. If you come across any use case that you want me to make a video upon, or if you're facing any issues that you want me to work on in apps and show how it is implemented, feel free to comment it in the comment sections. And there are many more features and many more videos coming in for VB apps. So yeah, stay tuned on the channel, share the video to your network, to your colleagues who are working on apps, and feel free to add as much feedback as you want to. Thank you so much for watching the complete video. See you in the next video.